សួស្តីលោកអ្នកនាងមានអ្នកស្ដាប់នឹងទស្សនាកម្មវិធីជាទីមេត្រីខ្ញុំបាទហាសានសូមស្វាគមន៍លោកអ្នកនាងពីរដ្ឋធានី Washington សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកសារជាថ្មីម្ដងទៀតយើងសូមស្វាគមន៍លោកអ្នកនាងមកកាន់កម្មវិធីផ្សាយរបស់សារព័ត៌មាន The Cambodia Daily ដែលផ្សាយតាមបណ្ដាញសង្គម Facebook YouTube និងនៅលើគេហទំព័រជាភាសាខ្មែរសម្រាប់យប់ថ្ងៃប្រហោះទី12ខែកញ្ញាត្រូវជាថ្ងៃ14កើតខែអាសត់ឆ្នាំកុលឯកស័កពុទ្ធសករាជ2563ត្រូវនឹងគ្រិស្តសករាជ2019ជាបឋមយើងសូមជូនអញ្ជើញលោកនាងស្ដាប់កិច្ចសម្ភាសន៍មួយរវាងលោកអេងឆៃអៀងអនុប្រធានគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិជាមួយនឹងលោកតាំងសារដាកាលពីថ្ងៃពុធទី11ខែកញ្ញាម្សិលមិញនៅឯវិមានរដ្ឋសភានាទីក្រុងរដ្ឋធានី Washington សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកនេះជាខ្លឹមសារពិស្ដាដូចតទៅនេះ
បាទនេះគឺជាអាដាមអេងឆៃអៀងដែលជាអនុប្រធានរបស់គណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិហើយលោកបានមកចូលរួមនៅក្នុងសកម្មភាពនៅថ្ងៃនេះបាទអាដាមយល់យ៉ាងម៉េចដែរចំពោះសកម្មភាពថ្ងៃនេះបាទ
ជាការល្អប្រសើរព្រោះសភាសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកខ្ញុំបានកត់សម្គាល់ឃើញថាមុននឹងធ្វើសេចក្តីសម្រេចឬមុនយកសេចក្តីស្នើច្បាប់ឬសេចក្តីច្បាប់ណាមួយចូលទៅសភាពេញអង្គគឺគេត្រូវការប្រមូលព័ត៌មានពីសាក្សីនានាតាមរយៈការធ្វើសកម្មភាពដោយករណីថ្ងៃនេះគឺគេមុននឹងសម្រេចអំពីបញ្ហាប្រទេសកម្ពុជានឹងគឺគណៈកម្មការសភាសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកបានអញ្ជើញតំណាងអង្គការសង្គមស៊ីវិលមកពីប្រទេសកម្ពុជាតំណាងអង្គការអន្តរជាតិអង្គការសហរដ្ឋជាតិតំណាងក្រុមហ៊ុនដើម្បីមកផ្ដល់សេចក្តីកម្មពីតកតងអំពីស្ថានភាពនៅកម្ពុជា
បាទនៅក្នុងបញ្ហាទាំងអស់នេះថាតើអាដាមមានការរំពឹងយ៉ាងណាដែរថាតើអាចនឹងសម្ពាធរបស់សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកអាចនឹងធ្វើឲ្យមានការបន្ធូរបន្ថយនៅបរិយាកាសវិបត្តិនយោបាយនៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាដែលកំពុងជាប់គាំងនេះហើយស្របពេលដែលគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិត្រូវបានរដ្ឋាភិបាលទីក្រុងភ្នំពេញរំលាយចោលហើយការចាប់ខ្លួនលោកកឹមសុខាអីជាដើមនោះបាទ
យើងដឹងថាតាំងពីគេចាប់ខ្លួនលោកប្រធានគណៈកម្មការនៅរំលាយគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិមកគឺរដ្ឋាភិបាលសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិករួមទាំងសភាសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកគឺគេបានតាក់ដានយ៉ាងយកចិត្តទុកដាក់ទៅពីស្ថានភាពនយោបាយនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាអញ្ចឹងឥឡូវនេះគឺគេប្រមូលផុសតាងថែមទៀតដើម្បីមានវិធានការបន្ថែមទៀតទៅលើរបបលោកហ៊ុនសែនដែលកំពុងតែជិះសេះលេងដៃនិយាយខ្លីជិះសេះលេងដៃកំពុងតែរំលោភសិទ្ធិមនុស្សយ៉ាងធ្ងន់ធ្ងររឿងប្រជាធិបតេយ្យនេះគឺបានស្លាប់បាត់ហើយក៏បានសម្លាប់បាត់ហើយប៉ុន្តែឥឡូវនេះស្ថានភាពសិទ្ធិមនុស្សគឺរំលោភខ្លាំងមែនទែនអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំមានជំនឿថាសេចក្តីសម្រេចរបស់គណៈកម្មការសិទ្ធិមនុស្សសភាសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកនេះនឹងអាចគេថានឹងអាចរុញឲ្យរបបហ៊ុនសែនត្រូវតែផ្លាស់ប្ដូរអេរិយាបថពីការរំលោភសិទ្ធិមនុស្សពីការស្លាប់យដៃមកគិតអំពីប្រជាធិបតេយ្យឡើងវិញ
អាដាមដូចដឹងហើយថាច្បាប់526កំពុងតែស្ថិតនៅក្នុងដៃព្រឹទ្ធសភាហើយថាតើក្នុងគណៈពេលនេះគឺជាពេលវេលាដែលសំខាន់មួយដែលពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរនៅក្នុងសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកជំរុញឲ្យព្រឹទ្ធសភារបស់ខ្លួននឹងធ្វើការអនុម័តសេចក្តីស្នើច្បាប់526នឹងតើរហូតមកទល់ពេលនេះក្រមរបស់អាដាមបានធ្វើកិច្ចការយ៉ាងណាដែរសម្រាប់ច្បាប់នេះដើម្បីឲ្យមានការអនុម័តនៅពេលខាងមុខ
បាទខ្ញុំបានកត់សម្គាល់ឃើញបងប្អូនប្រជាពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរដែលមានជាតិអាមេរិកហ្នឹងគឺលោកបានប្រឹងប្រែងកំពុងធ្វើការជាមួយនឹងតំណាងរបស់លោកដែលជាសមាជិកព្រឹទ្ធសភាតាមបណ្ដារដ្ឋនីមួយៗដើម្បីជួយធ្វើយ៉ាងណាឲ្យព្រឹទ្ធសភាហ្នឹងឲ្យអនុម័តបានឆាប់រហ័សដើម្បីដាក់ទណ្ឌកម្មទៅលើរបបហ៊ុនសែន
បាទអាដាមមួយទៀតពាក់ព័ន្ធទៅនឹងបញ្ហាសកម្មជនរបស់គណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិសប្តាហ៍នេះគឺកំពុងតែរងនឹងការចាប់ជាង20នាក់ហើយជាច្រើនអ្នកទៀតកំពុងតែរត់ភៀសខ្លួននៅក្រៅប្រទេសតើសម្រាប់អាដាមដូចថាជាថ្នាក់ដឹកនាំនៃគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិអាដាមមានផែនការឬក៏មានយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រយ៉ាងណាក្នុងការជួយជ្រោមជ្រែងអ្នកទាំងអស់នោះដើម្បីឲ្យរួចផុតពីការធ្វើទុកបុកម្នេញបានមកដល់រស់នៅប្រទេសទី3មានសេរីភាពមានសុវត្ថិភាពពិតប្រាកដហ្នឹងបាទ
ខ្ញុំកត់សម្គាល់ឃើញថាអំពើអយុត្តិធម៌ដែលរបបលោកហ៊ុនសែនកំពុងតែប្រព្រឹត្តមកលើប្រជាពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរក្តីមកលើអ្នកគ្រប់គ្រងគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិក្តីតាមរយៈការចាប់ចងការគម្រាមកំហែងទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងវាមិនបានធ្វើឲ្យកាត់ជោគជ័យទេអំពើអយុត្តិធម៌ទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងធ្វើឲ្យមនុស្សកាត់មានការឈឺចាប់ហើយការឈឺចាប់កាន់តែខ្លាំងការងើបឡើងកាន់តែខ្លាំងហើយអ្នកដែលរងគ្រោះទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងគាត់គ្មានបំណងដើម្បីចង់រស់នៅប្រទេសទី3ទេគាត់ចង់រស់នៅលើទឹកដីប្រទេសកម្ពុជាប៉ុន្តែគាត់ចង់បានប្រទេសកម្ពុជាជាប្រទេសមួយដែលមានការគ្រប់គ្រងពេញលេញប្រទេសកម្ពុជាដែលមានប្រជាធិបតេយ្យពិតប្រាកដតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងទេអ្វីដែលគាត់បានងើបឡើងតស៊ូនេះគឺបំណងប្រាថ្នារបស់គាត់មានតែប៉ុណ្្នឹងប៉ុន្តែឲ្យចងចាំចុះថាអ្នកដែលរងគ្រោះហើយមានគ្រួសារអ្នករងគ្រោះក៏ដូចអ្នកដែល កំពុងតែឈឺចាប់ហ្នឹងគឺគេមិនស្ងៀមទេបាទហើយសន្ទុះនឹងកាន់តែកើតខ្លាំង
ខ្ញុំបានន័យថាអ្នកទាំងអស់នោះមិនចង់ចាក់ចេញទៅកាន់ប្រទេសទី3ទេប៉ុន្តែគាត់ចង់ត្រឡប់ទៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាវិញ
បាទឲ្យតែប្រទេសកម្ពុជាមានប្រជាធិបតេយ្យប្រកបមានការគ្រប់គ្រងប្រកបគឺទៅវិញទៅរូបខ្ញុំហ្នឹងគឺខ្ញុំអត់មានតែចង់រស់នៅសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកទេថ្ងៃ9វិច្ឆិកាខ្ញុំអូនដំណើរលោកសំស៊ីទៅហើយបាទហើយខ្ញុំបានត្រៀមខ្លួនរួចស្អីរឿងអស់ហ្នឹង
បាទហើយនៅពេលថ្ងៃទី9ខែវិច្ឆិកាហ្នឹងថាតើអាដាមនឹងទៅដណ្ដើមគ្នាជាមួយនឹងលោកសំរងស៊ីតែម្ដងឬក៏ទៅក្រោយឬក៏ទៅមុនលោកសំរងស៊ីទៅរៀបចំមុនឬក៏យ៉ាងម៉េចដែរអាដាម
ខ្ញុំផែនការផ្សេងទៀតខ្ញុំសូមអត់ជម្រាបជូនពីនេះទេប៉ុន្តែគាត់ថាថ្ងៃ9វិច្ឆិកាហ្នឹងគឺខ្ញុំអមដំណើរតែផ្ទាល់ប៉ុន្តែមុនថ្ងៃ9វិច្ឆិកាខ្ញុំធ្វើកិច្ចការអីផ្សេងទៀតហ្នឹងសូមមិននិយាយប្រាប់ទេព្រោះវាធម្មតាយើងត្រូវមានកិច្ចការច្រើនដែលយើងធ្វើព្រោះវាមានយើងមិនដឹងថាវាមានរឿងអ្វីដែលអាចកើតឡើងទេប៉ុន្តែយើងជឿជាក់ថាយុទ្ធធរនឹងទទួលបាននៅថ្ងៃ9វិច្ឆិកា
អាដាមចុះបើសិនជាថ្ងៃ9វិច្ឆិកាទៅជាថ្ងៃដែលខកខានចូលប្រទេសកម្ពុជាវិញហើយអាចជាបរាជ័យមិនចូលវិញតើអាដាមមានវិធីសាស្ត្រអីផ្សេងទៀតដែរទេមានយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រអីផ្សេងទៀតដែរ
វាអត់មានរឿងបោះសិនទេលោកសាដាព្រោះយើងបានសម្រេចហើយគឺយើងបានកំណត់ពេលវេលាច្បាស់លាស់គឺថ្ងៃទី9វិច្ឆិកាអញ្ចឹងថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំសូមអំពាវនាវឲ្យបងប្អូនប្រជារដ្ឋខ្មែរក្នុងប្រទេសគឺថាចូលរួមទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺយើងដឹងថាប្រទេសកម្ពុជាជាប្រទេសយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាបើយើងចង់ឲ្យមានសេរីភាពឆាប់ថាយើងចង់ឲ្យវិជាតៃនៃការឡើងវិញយើងចង់ឲ្យប្រទេសកម្ពុជាមានការអវត្តកតគឺយើងចូលរួមអស់គ្នាជាមួយនឹងសមរស្មីគ្នានេះហើយកាលណាយើងចូលរួមច្រើនគឺយើងជោគជ័យហើយពាក្យថាខ្លាចគឺអត់មានទេព្រោះឥឡូវដូចយើងជាទាហានដែលយើងត្រៀមឡើងសមរភូមិប្រយុទ្ធហើយកាលណាយើងឡើងសមរភូមិប្រយុទ្ធហើយណាយើងនិយាយពាក្យខ្លាចយើងប្រយុទ្ធអត់រួចទេអញ្ចឹងរឿងពាក្យថាខ្លាចគេចាប់ខ្លាចគេចងខ្លាចគេសម្លាប់គឺអត់មានទេដោយរូបខ្ញុំដែលខ្ញុំស្រីចិត្តទៅហើយណា
លែងខ្លាចហើយអាដាមលែងខ្លាច
ខ្ញុំអត់មានពាក្យខ្លាចក្នុងខ្ញុំទេហើយអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំសូមពីនៅបងប្អូនទាំងអស់កុំចែកចាយសារអកុសលរបស់គូបដិបត្តិព្រោះឥឡូវយើងដឹងហើយគូបដិបត្តិគឺគេប្រើសារបំផិតបំភ័យយើងហើយបើយើងភិតភ័យយើងចាញ់គេហើយអញ្ចឹងយើងត្រូវគុំចាប់អារម្មណ៍នឹងសាររបស់គូបដិបត្តិយើងស្ដាប់សាររបស់មេរបស់យើងបាទដូចពេលយើងឡើងសមរភូមិអញ្ចឹងឯងយើងស្ដាប់សាររបស់មេយើងយើងស្ដាប់សាររបស់គូប្រកួតរបស់យើងគូបដិបត្តិទេព្រោះគូបដិបត្តិសាររបស់គាត់គឺបន្តិចបង្អាក់យើងប៉ុន្តែសារមេតើរបស់យើងគឺច្បាស់លាស់ថាអត់ទៅមុខទៅមុខលូនក្រាបថយអានេះគឺយើងជោគជ័យហើយឲ្យជឿជាក់ថាលោកហ៊ុនសែនមានធ្វើអីទេខ្ញុំមានជំនឿច្បាស់លាស់មក
ប្រហែលភាគរយឯដល់
មានមួយចំនួន 100% ព្រោះលោកហ៊ុនសែនកាលណាយើងចូលរួមច្រើននោះមកកកកុញលោកហ៊ុនសែនមិនអាចប្រើប្រាស់កម្លាំងដើម្បីបាញ់ប្រហារមនុស្សប្រជាប្រដ្ឋទេលោកហ៊ុនសែនគឺជាខ្មែរដែរអានេះគឺជាចំណុចមួយ
ប៉ុន្តែចែកដល់ឧទាហរណ៍ថាលោកហ៊ុនសែនចាប់អេដាមសំរងស៊ីអីចឹងណាហើយថាតើកម្លាំងអេដាមហ្នឹងហ៊ានងើបបះបោឲ្យមើលទៅ
អានេះខ្ញុំច្បាស់ជាវាមានហើយពោលវាធម្មតាវាតែក្នុងដំណាក់កាលមួយមនុស្សកាលណាមានការបដិចិត្តហើយណាគឺវាច្បាស់ជាមានហើយវាមិនអត់ទេអានេះ
ខ្ញុំចុះហេតុអីបានកម្លាំងមិនងើបពេលដែលចាប់លោកកឹមសុខា
ទេអានឹងវាជារឿងមួយពេលវេលាវាខុសគ្នាបាទពេលវេលាវាខុសគ្នាវាមិនអាចពេលវេលាដូចគ្នាអស់ទេវាទៅតាមស្ថានភាពស្ថានភាពអញ្ចឹងបាទដូច្នេះគឺថាយើងដែលនិយាយខ្លីទៅគឺយើងបានសម្រេចចិត្តប៉ុន្តែបងប្អូនមានជំនឿថាបើយើងក្រោកស្រុកគ្នាទាំងអស់គ្នាណាគឺយើងឈ្នះប៉ុន្តែបើយើងអត់ក្រោកយើងទុកឲ្យទីលោកសំស៊ីម្នាក់ឯងទៅម្នាក់ឯងឆ្កយយើងណាអានេះយើងចាញ់ទេការតស៊ូវាចប់ហើយ
បាទអាដាមមានអ្នកវិភាគលោកកឹមសុខគាត់បានលើកឡើងថាប្រសិនបើលោកសំរងស៊ីមិនហ៊ានចូលស្រុកថ្ងៃទី9ខែវិច្ឆិកាទេបកមកបង្រួបបង្រួមបញ្ហាផ្ទៃក្នុងរបស់គណៈបក្សសង្គ្រោះជាតិដែលកំពុងមានភាពចម្រូងចម្រាសរង្គោះរង្គើនឹងវិញអាដាមមានការបកស្រាយយ៉ាងណាដែរជុំវិញការលើកឡើងនេះ
ខ្ញុំអត់ទៅបកស្រាយឬអត់ទៅធ្វើការវិភាគលើអ្នកវិភាគទៀតទេអានោះទុកឲ្យអ្នកវិភាគគេនិយាយចុះបាទតែចំពោះខ្ញុំដែលជាថ្នាក់គណៈបកមួយរូបគឺយើងបានកំណត់គោលដៅរបស់យើងគោលការណ៍របស់យើងច្បាស់លាស់
បាទសូមអរគុណច្រើនអាដាមអេឆៃអៀងបាទអរគុណ
បាទលោកអ្នកនាងមានស្ដាប់នឹងទស្សនាជាទីមេត្រីអំបញ្ញមិញនេះលោកអ្នកនាងទើបនឹងបានស្ដាប់កិច្ចសម្ភាសរវាងលោកអេងឆៃអៀងអនុប្រធានគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិអតីតគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិនិងលោកតាំងសារដានៃសារព័ត៌មាន The Cambodia Daily បាទនៅពេលនេះយើងបានមកដល់កម្មវិធី Idea Talk តាមការគ្រោងទុកដោយដែលយើងបានសន្យាកាលពីប្រហែល1ម៉ោងមុននោះបាទ បាទសូមស្វាគមន៍លោកអ្នកនាងមកកាន់កម្មវិធី Idea Talk សាជាថ្មីម្ដងទៀតនារាត្រីនេះដែលវាគ្មិនរបស់យើងគឺមានអ្នកស្រី Janet Singh ប្រធានចលនាស្ត្រីរបស់គណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិបណ្ដាញសកលនិងអ្នកស្រី Olivia Enos អ្នកវិភាគគោលនយោបាយជាន់ខ្ពស់នៃវិទ្យាស្ថាន Heritage Foundation នៅរដ្ឋធានី Washington សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកលោកស្រីទាំងពីររូបនឹងចូលពិភាក្សាលើប្រធានបទថាតើការដកប្រព័ន្ធអនុគ្រោះពន្ធ GSP របស់សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកជាជំរើសល្អក្នុងការជំរុញឲ្យមានការស្ដារលទ្ធិប្រជាធិបតេយ្យនៅកម្ពុជាវិញដែរឬទេប៉ុន្តែកិច្ចសម្ភាសហើយនឹងការសន្ទនានៅពេលនេះយើងនឹងធ្វើជាភាសាអង់គ្លេសដូច្នេះបើប្រសិនជាលោកអ្នកនាងមានសំណួរឬយោបល់សូមសរសេរនៅក្នុងប្រអប់ comment ខាងក្រោមនៃការផ្សាយរបស់យើងតាមអាស័យដ្ឋាន www.facebook.com/withoutfearorfavorkh But Chipatom, first of all, I'd like to welcome both of you to our studio today. Ms. Olivia Enos is a senior policy analyst, Asian Studies Center at the Heritage Foundation, and Ms. Janet Singh, President, Global Women Network for CNRP. Welcome both of you to the studio today. I'd like to begin our first conversation by posing this question to Olivia. At the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission on Cambodia yesterday, you support the position that Congress not withdraw GSP from Cambodia. What is the main reason behind that? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that one of the primary benefits that the U.S. receives from, or that Cambodia receives from the U.S. is access to U.S. markets. Yeah. And one of my big fears is that if there's no problem with reviewing GSP. We can review it. We can see whether or not Cambodia meets the standards. If it doesn't meet the standards, okay, maybe it needs to be removed. But if it does meet the standards and we're going to remove it anyway, I think that would be very unwise. But the primary reason I object to withdrawal of GSP is because the people who need to be held directly accountable are Hun Sen and senior members of the Cambodian government who are directly responsible for undermining democracy, for harming human rights there. And revoking GSP may hurt the average Cambodian person a whole lot more than it actually hurts the Cambodian government. And that's why I think it's much better strategy to prioritize sanctioning those high-level officials, including Hun Sen, to hold them accountable for what's taken place in Cambodia.
We have a number of resolutions pending passage in Congress that would call for tough measure against certain individuals in the government. But when it comes to withdrawing or suspending the GSP status, don't you think that by not suspending or withdrawing, if it doesn't meet the standard, the Hun Sen government is going to hold the people hostage?
I mean, I think that, you have objective standards for a reason. And so obviously if it does not meet it, we have to do something about that. And I think that's why you are supposed to have a semi-regular review process for any country that receives GSP. I think that at the end of the day, the primary way that you shift Hun Sen's risk calculus is by targeting things that matter to him. And I think the thing that matters most to him is his own personal bank account. And if you were to have Treasury sanctions, I think that you would be much more likely to see Hun Sen changing his thinking on various issues. I don't think that GSP would necessarily have that same impact.
Ms. Janet Singh, what is your opinion on that?
It's going to move. Well, first of all, I ខ្ញុំសូមថ្វាយបង្គំព្រះសង្ឃគ្រប់អង្គហើយក៏សូមជម្រាបសួរដល់បងប្អូនជនរួមជាតិទាំងអស់ I want to take the opportunity to congratulate Olivia for her testimony at the Tom Lantos with such an articulate testimony. I appreciate what Olivia said regarding she's trying to look at it within the protecting of Cambodian people perspective. But my take on that is that, like you said, Hun Sen right now is using Cambodian people as hostage. Yes, sanction on the individual may work on him, may make him think a bit, but still, he have enough asset that I don't think it really matter much to him. So withdrawing GSP, I think it will help on top of individual sanction. Because for a year, you notice that Hun Sen doesn't care about Cambodian people. And time after time, he's using them as a shield, as a hostage, and knowing that the American government are very strong on human rights, on democracy, and thinking that the American will not do anything.
More than just
if he would have not abide by the American request. So I say, I'm looking out for the Cambodian people, but this thing is like a wound or some sort of disease that drag on forever. So even though it hurt, there's something need to be done and quick. Yes.
Ms. Janet saying you were also at the State Department yesterday. Can you tell us again who do you meet and what did you want the State Department officials to do?
I was invited back. Actually, it relates to back in August 19. I met with the State Department regarding CNRP youth, 6 of them.
Right.
That right now they were they were ordered by the Hun Sen government, or mainly his son and one of the minister from his cabinet.
6 youths in Cambodia.
6 youth. I'm going to say right now they're not in Cambodia because they had to flee the country.
They had to flee the country.
Yes. So their lives in danger. The arrest was to arrest this 6 youth, CNRP youth, with all costs. And there isn't a warrant out for their arrest, but arrest them first. And then we'll think of something to penalize them. So my visit yesterday was meeting with Sandra Duput, and she's handled, I think, part of Asian portfolio.
Right.
So I'm there to see what can she do to help this youth. On top of it, there are 27 CNRP member and supporter are currently in prison. So I'm there to bring it's like an up-to-date what's going on and see what can the State Department do to help with their safety.
Olivia, you know as well as I do that U.S. Congress, both the House and the Senate, have before them scores of resolutions and or acts. Some were passed and others were pending passage. These are about what we are prepared to punish Hun Sen, the Hun Sen government, for extinguishing the light of democracy in Cambodia. Yet the Phnom Penh regime couldn't care less. Do you think withdrawing or suspending the generalized systems of preference, or GSP, can restore or help restore democracy there?
So I think that the best hope for restoring democracy in Cambodia would be to target those individual leaders. I'm glad that...
You still hold to that view.
I do, yeah. I'm glad that Janet and I are going back and forth on that, because I think it's really good to have those ideas and the opposing viewpoints really laid out in a clear manner. One of my main concerns, and I think, what's being considered in Congress, I want to distinguish it from a complete pulling of GSP. It's asking the U.S. government to do a review as to whether or not Cambodia may be eligible for having GSP revoked. And I think that's a pretty significant threat. I'm sure that Hun Sen is sitting in Phnom Penh shaking in his boots at the prospect of that. But what I really worry about is if we were to go through with revoking GSP, there is this potential that you sacrifice some of the economic freedom that is brought to Cambodia through free trade. And I think that a lot of Cambodians enjoy access to U.S. markets. There are sectors that enjoy access to U.S. markets that otherwise wouldn't. And I don't think that it necessarily follows that if you promote economic freedom, there will automatically be strong social and political rights that will be restored. But I do think that having the ability to operate in the market gives an additional space for the average Cambodian person to be able to engage with other ideas, engage with other products, engage with other markets. And I fear that if we were to revoke GSP, we would actually be closing the space for civil society to operate, closing the space for the business communities to flourish. And I think that in some regards, this is one of the last areas that the average Cambodian has to enjoy freedom. And so I'm concerned about that. But as you mentioned, there's, of course, a lot of other legislation pending in Congress. At Heritage, we're not allowed to endorse any particular legislation, but I think some of the ideas that are espoused in the legislation, particularly targeting those individuals, is something that should be encouraged. But I would also remind us, we were reminded by John Sifton from Human Rights Watch during the testimony yesterday, that the U.S. doesn't need to pass specific legislation. It already has the authorities under Global Magnitsky to target individuals by Treasury on human rights and corruption grounds. And that would have them placed on the specially designated nationals list with their assets on the line. I think that's really important and serious, and I think the U.S. government could do it any day that they like.
I thought the Magnitsky Act was targeted, on the Russian oligarchs, members of the... It applies to everyone around the world?
The original iteration of the Magnitsky Act was only targeted at Russians.
Right.
But what was passed a couple of years ago actually made it, and then it had to be reworked through an executive authority. It allows the U.S. to target any individual in any country who is found to be complicit in gross human rights violations or acts of corruption.
Right. I'd like to add something to that. Because I was at the State Department, not this visit, the other visit, and I had tried to push for the State Department to put the Global Magnitsky Act on more or broader. Instead of put it on one person and that person is a general, it's not even related to him or a member of his family.
Get close to him.
You ask, is that going to hurt Hun Sen? No, he can already replace his general. So I said, if you're going to put that sanction, put it on Hun Sen, put it on his family member, and more. So the response was, well, this is global, and it's not, we have a lot of bad people in the world, so we cannot just concentrate on putting on Cambodian people or leader. So that's why we're going back to the legislative, the HR 526. So our only way to focus for Cambodian and Cambodian leader is to push this bill or this legislative to get passed. So this will be focused on Cambodia.
Specific.
Specific for Cambodia. Like I said, the answer was we have so many bad people in other part of the world. We cannot just focus on Cambodia with the Global Magnitsky Act. And going back to Olivia talking about the trade market open for Cambodian people. It's not really open for Cambodian people or Cambodian, I'm talking about with these small business. It only open for like the Chinese, the one with the gigantic business. So it's not benefiting the people itself. And on top of it, right now, look at it. Everybody in the world knows that China dominates the market. So it's only benefit China. So whether you withdraw or have it, I don't think really impact the low rank of people.
The lower level people.
The people that have like a little small mom and pop business. It's not going to impact them. So it will impact Hun Sen. And it's about time we need to stop have Hun Sen using the people.
That will lead me to the next question for Olivia. Do you see anything more the U.S. can do beyond words to help restore democracy. We've talked a lot, a lot of words, no action.
Yes. I think everyone was disappointed after July 2018 elections when the U.S. government issued, of course, a really strong statement saying we condemn the elections in Cambodia. But then if you look at the very bottom, it says, and we are hopefully going to be considering further add-on, next steps.
Right.
If I had my dream next steps, I think there would be maybe 4 or 5 things that I would do. Number 1, global Magnitsky, targeting Hun Sen.
Okay.
Number 2, have a reforming of the Cambodia contact group that could come out of the signatories to the Paris Peace Agreement.
The 1991.
1991.
Right.
Yes, they have an obligation to hold Cambodia accountable in the event of backsliding. We're way beyond backsliding.
Right.
You can't even call Cambodia a democracy anymore.
No.
All the institutions are gone. Number 3, I would say the U.S. should revisit some of its democracy assistance to Cambodia. Not so that it's not being given to Cambodia, but so that we make sure that the right types of assistance are being given that additional space is created for civil society. I think those are probably the top things that we should be focused on. But one other one, and this is something that's really surprised me, the U.S. responded pretty quickly after the dissolution of the opposition and, of course, also the initial imprisonment of Kim Suk-ha. One of them was to put visa restrictions on individuals. Those visa restrictions currently don't extend to family members. I think that would be an extraordinarily easy measure for State Department to take to expand the existing visa restrictions so that it affects family members. The family members of Hun Sen and other senior government officials are more likely to travel to the U.S. than Hun Sen and the senior members themselves.
Definitely.
So this is going to hit them really hard if we do that.
I think the Khmer community, the Cambodian American community, should be focused on that area. Ms. Singh, from our Khmer perspective, the Cambodian opposition party, the CNRP leadership, has shuttled the world to rally support from Australian, European parliaments and U.S. Congress to take punitive measures against the Hun Sen rule. Now we have the EU, the U.S. threatening to use the EBA and the GSP tools, respectively, to bring back democratic progress process for the Cambodian people. Do you think these tools alone will change Hun Sen's position?
Well, I think it will at least frighten him, rather than we don't have any tool right now.
Okay.
Because Hun Sen right now, he run this government solo by himself. The election, I don't even call it an election. It was just a symbolic of an election just to put himself in the seat for the next 5 years. So coming back, we need something. And this is kind of like a plea to the international. We need something to put serious pressure.
Something meaning something stronger than what it is now.
Something stronger than the word undermine democracy. Something that take away something that it hurt.
Okay.
So I meant like EBA, GSP. I'm all for that because, like I said, I do love Cambodian people, but it does not affect them. I don't think it affects them. It only affects the top level of the government.
Many Cambodian Americans overseas in the diaspora and also the people in Cambodia, they're all hopeful that the CNRP is going to be an alternative, if there is a change in Cambodia in some way. I'm going to go back to that aspect in a little bit. But Olivia, from your experience here in Washington, the capital city of the superpower here, your connection, your relationship with some government officials and congressional staffers, will our U.S. Congress and the Trump administration go as far as to impose economic sanction on Hun Sen and his ruling party? Risk slowing down its economic growth and driving unemployment rate high among factory workers? Do you think they'll go as far as to punish Hun Sen?
I think that
it's
possible.
It's
I think it's possible that they would target Hun Sen, and if not Hun Sen himself, possibly some of the higher ranking officials who are also responsible for what we've
associates.
seen. Yeah, I think that that's possible. I think that it was certainly encouraging that we did see, the Cambodia Democracy Act pass the House. It's now, of course, awaiting passage in the Senate. These are good signs, but I think that, there's a strong need for all folks in the international community to raise awareness. I mean, we were able to have 1991 Paris Peace Agreement because so many countries were willing to come together to call out Cambodia after, many, many things had happened that were terrible. And I think we're at another watershed moment in Cambodia where there is a strong need for the international community to step in because when a government abrogates its primary responsibility, its duty to respect and to protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of its people, then the international community has, sort of strong ground to stand on to intervene.
Stakeholders should, have a say in the process. You've traveled to Asia and on a number of occasions to attend security conferences and seminars in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Taiwan. Were any participants from these countries seriously concerned about China's increased economic military expansion in Cambodia or Southeast Asia? And what are they contemplating, on doing, if any?
Every conference I go to, the main subject of conversation is China and its rising influence in Asia. You can't ignore it. It's the elephant in the room. And it's something that we have to address. I think that countries in Southeast Asia need to be more worried about their increased engagement with China. Not because we're asking them to not engage with China. I think all countries will economically engage with both China and the U.S. But because there are real consequences to their freedoms and also their national interest to engage with China. I mean, one example of this would be China is not acting in the interest of both recipients. It's not acting in the interest of Southeast Asia. It's bringing, for example, its own workers when it has infrastructure projects in Cambodia. It's not helping the local economy in the way that often U.S. projects are built to do. And beyond that, there are really serious human rights and security threats emanating from China's surveillance state. We know that they've exported surveillance technology to many countries around the world, often to equip authoritarian leaders to spy on their own citizens. But beyond that, the surveillance system actually poses a threat to the authoritarian leaders themselves because China is deploying surveillance technology to spy on the inner workings of other governments. This is incredibly concerning from a national security standpoint and something that we should be paying more attention to. The U.S. has long been a reliable partner, one that promoted human rights and freedom, but also promoted the economic interests of other countries as well. This should make the U.S. a much more preferable partner to China in the long term.
Have you heard anything in Washington about what our government or our Congress would do with respect to the Chinese influence in Cambodia?
I mean, I think a lot of people are concerned, especially after the reports of the naval base being leased out. This is very concerning news, and I think that it does pose a security threat to the U.S., and it poses a threat to U.S. interests in promoting freedom of navigation, which is a core component of the Indo-Pacific strategy and a priority of U.S. engagement in Asia. It has the potential to really impede sovereignty, especially of Cambodia. I think average Cambodians are worried about that. So I think the U.S. should be very strong in its statements and its condemnation of China when they are acting in ways that are not to advocate and help others around the globe.
The Hun Sen government is tilting toward China more and more now, and many Cambodians who are concerned about what's going to happen, especially those who experienced communism way back in the 80s, 70s and 80s. We want to see America take some concrete step. What do you think? What step do you think America should take?
I mean, I think that the U.S. needs to hold China accountable for the human rights violations that it carries out in its own country. I mean, you have 1 to 3 million Uyghurs in political re-education facilities. You have people of all faiths being persecuted, Christian pastors being thrown into prison. I think that there's a real need to up the ante with China. We have so far focused on economic issues and maybe even potential for security cooperation, although to a much more limited extent. We haven't focused on calling out China for its human rights violations. And I think we need to call them out for their domestic violations if there's to be any hope of them not carrying out those violations in countries beyond its border.
Right.
I
Please,
think, I just like to add. I think the U.S. should be very, very careful with China superpower.
In what way?
Well, you look at China start to plug off country by country in the Southeast, in the Asia, from democracy, so China become within the last few years very strong.
Yeah.
So if the U.S. not paying close attention, China become the superpower in the world.
Right.
Then and don't think that this is only gonna happen at the part of Asia.
Right.
Eventually, it will attack the U.S. itself, not
US
by
interest,
interest, but not by violence.
Right.
But it'll rule like economic warfare.
Right.
Yes, and going back to Olivia mentioned about the technology, the civilian, we had spoke about this. I am very, very concerned because you start to see this is how China start to monitor the other country by collecting all information.
Yeah.
So eventually it's gonna turn Cambodian or other country back to a dictatorship.
Right.
And dictatorship now, it's not gonna be dictated by their own country. This will be a more like a world dictatorship. It'll get dictated by China.
Right.
So so I think we as a people, the U.S., need to be more concerned about looking at
take
this.
some measures, to prevent that from
take a
happening.
serious measure. Right now you look at Cambodia and say, okay, Cambodia is a small country. We can just let it go.
Right. Would you have anything to add to that?
I just wanted to add, I think that Janet's absolutely right, and that there is this battle that is going on in Asia, and the battle is over values. It is also over competing systems of governance. The U.S. has long been a purveyor of freedom as a healthy republic, and that has meant not only freedom for its own citizens, but also the promotion of freedom abroad. In China, you have authoritarianism. These two could not be at any further opposite ends of the spectrum from each other. And so I think when we look at Asia over the long term, we have to ask ourselves, do the value systems, does the promotion of rights, does the promotion of freedom factor into our own national interests when we look? Because the reality is that U.S. interests are best advanced when more countries embrace freedom, embrace democracy, and promote human rights for their own citizens. And so it's in U.S. interests to promote that over the long term. And that means we have to be unequivocal in our condemnation of the rise of authoritarianism as we see taking place today.
Right. Okay, just one thing I'd like to add. This is a question from our listeners and viewers by the name of Bin Mani. Why the United States is establishing a relationship with Vietnam, knowing that Vietnam is also a communist country and also violates human rights, in Vietnam, and instead of taking the same punitive or headlong, opposition like the U.S. is taking with China, fighting in trade war, we are now courting Vietnam to become our ally in that part of the world. What is your view?
I think that the U.S. has a lot of different interests in Asia, and obviously has, distinguished between partners and allies, friends, and otherwise in Asia. I think that the U.S. actually has been traditionally pretty strong in condemning human rights violations in Vietnam, and I think that should continue to be a core part of U.S. policy. I mean, if I look back historically, the U.S. has placed Vietnam, for example, on Tier 3 in the Trafficking in Persons report for a number of years. I'm not sure what its ranking is this year, but I know that it has been in the past. And when it's come to condemning Vietnam on religious freedom violations, Vietnam was at one point a country of particular concern. Now, there have been changes in Vietnam that I think have represented a turn more toward freedom. And so you've seen improvements in their rankings, especially in the International Religious Freedom Report and otherwise. But I think the U.S. needs to continue to promote values and hold those accountable who are undermining freedom.
So you think Vietnam is listening to?
This is my opinion. The American government's more like generous with Vietnam. I think it's due to the Vietnam War. The little guilt's always there, I think. And so on top of it, Vietnam encroached Cambodia, not aggressive. And Vietnam power is not as aggressive as China. China, I look at China into Cambodia more like an invasion, not by force, but by economic. So the American government look at this, they're more nervous toward China. But on the other side, they forgot that Vietnam's doing the same thing, but more like a slow pace. And I like going back, because they have this Vietnam War, so they're kind of a relationship there that they need to rebuild or something a bit in Vietnam.
In Congress, some parts of Congress, a sense of guilt. Why we went to Vietnam in the first place. Okay. So there's another question from our listeners and viewers. People say the U.S. only have the Congress resolutions in order to scare dictatorship. Is this enough?
So, I mean, Congress definitely has gone beyond resolutions. Obviously, there is different legislation that's under consideration. I think that there's a recognition that what's taken place in Cambodia, may have been preventable. And so now, unfortunately, rather than putting in place preventative measures, we're having to clean up what has taken place there. And so I think that it's good that there is so much energy. I mean, we obviously saw the testimony yesterday. There are members of Congress who care deeply about Cambodia and want to see a brighter future for the country. I think they're wanting to explore all of the tools that are out there and available for them to do so. And I think, we should encourage them to keep doing that.
Sure, yeah. I'd like to touch on the dissolved Cambodian opposition party, the CNRP, which Ms. Janet saying belong, that is trying to change the way Cambodia is being ruled by the CPP-led government. I notice oftentimes it sent a conflicting signal to the people who support it. The first public claim is that former CNRP President Kem Sokha, who is now in house arrest, and acting President Sam Rang Si are one, meaning they are inseparable. Still, the rank and file appears to contradict that claim and focus on bashing each other. How do you see the party you support can push for a change in those in power?
Well, let me put it this way. When you have two parents, one parent is getting sick, say one parent.
Okay.
So now we will look at Kem Sokha as a parent, a mom that's sick. The children tend to blame each other, tend to point finger at each other.
Okay.
So that's a conflict right there. And I still can see the unities coming back. One, we try to get Mr. Kem Sokha out of the house arrest or out of the prison, push for Hun Sen government to release him, push for if there a hearing, it should have been a hearing by now. Because right now the people of Cambodia just sit and wait to see what was going on. So the conflicts, I don't look at the conflicts as a serious conflict. One, these two people are back to practice politics. They will work within their party to bring unity together. And then keep marching.
But I just try to understand, do you think they want real change or just try to look for an accommodation, or some kind of a state of coexistence?
The wanting for the change, it's very, very real.
Very real.
Now, can they accomplish it? They have to work very hard. Yeah, but it's
Do
there.
you think they have to change some way the way they are doing business?
Cambodian people right now wanted a change,
Right.
wanted a real election.
Yeah.
Up until now, besides 2017, I don't think there's a real election. And we were so hopeful that the commune election 2017, we look at it, we saw a signal that here an election that the
Right.
people can count on for the
Yeah.
change.
Right.
So yes, they do want to change, but they just need to find how to bring
How
it,
to.
how to go about it.
Do they know how to now?
I know there's a CNRP committee.
Yeah.
They are working together, which I'm not in.
Right.
They're working together. They have strategy. They try to implement strategy to bring
Right.
this change.
Yeah.
It's not very easy. You have to look at this. When you have one side that have totally power,
Right.
and then the one side that have nothing
Right.
but trying
Right.
to make people understand.
You have the
Try
popular
to
support.
bring.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You have the popular support. Yeah. The CNRP has.
That's all you have, the popular support.
Yeah.
But then when you have the superpower keep threatening you, want to kill you, want to arrest
Right,
you,
right.
I mean, people do get scared,
Yeah.
and they tend to take a step back.
Right. Right.
So it isn't fair to CNRP to bring. To bring change, and people say, "Oh, why aren't CNRP bringing change yet?"
Right.
It's not that easy.
I know. Yeah, I understand that. Okay. Thank you, Janet. Olivia, do you have any recommendation, for the pro-democracy activists in Cambodia or elsewhere to make themselves a formidable force that can drive autocratic rule, into oblivion?
I mean, I think that it's very difficult right now for civil society to operate, and that's really
We have
why.
seen things happening in Hong Kong,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of different ways to express dissent. Obviously, protests in Hong Kong is one way of doing it. But one thing I would caution on protests is that I think that unless you have a very singular message, unfortunately, other folks can sometimes jump on the bandwagon who don't share your message, who are really just out to generate chaos.
Right.
And so you have to be very pointed, very particular when you're going to engage in a protest movement. And I think the Hong Kong protests, they had that one goal. They wanted to get rid of the extradition law, and so that was what made it effective.
Sure.
But I think for other civil society members, I think to the extent possible, I mean, outlets like Cambodia Daily, like Voice of America, Radio Free Asia have got to be out there front and center, being critical of the government, raising serious issues, creating and generating space for civil society to operate, and calling out Hun Sen when he is shutting down NGOs, when he is closing down, anti-trafficking shops. I mean, one of the things in the trafficking in persons report that really stood out to me was, one, Cambodia got downgraded to Tier 3 this year.
Right.
That was pretty significant. And one of the reasons to
Tier
Tier 3, it's
Tier
the
3
worst
on
designation a country can
Very
receive
low.
in the trafficking in
Trafficking
persons
in-
report put out by
okay.
State
Right,
Department.
right.
And
Okay.
one of the things in the report is that they said we need the government to stop pursuing spurious claims against opposition leaders to the detriment of carrying out really valuable anti-trafficking work.
Right.
The government has to stop these types of things.
right.
And so that would be my advice to civil society leaders. Make sure you're calling out the government.
Right.
Make it known. Make it known to the international community so we can come and help.
That's what the Cambodia Daily has been trying to do without fears or favor.
Yes, I love it.
All right, Ms. Janet, do you think any change will happen in November this year after Sam Rainsy returns to Cambodia, as he pledges he'll do, with foreign parliamentarians and 1 million or so supporters accompanying him?
His return will cause an uproar, an uprising.
Right.
Will it bring change? It will bring some sort of change.
Some change.
But will it bring
To a certain extent.
Would it change like the leadership?
Right.
I don't think it happened
It's gonna
within
happen.
November.
Right.
But yes, once he's
So
into
he
the
may
country,
go, but thing will be the same.
changing. Well, it will bring change. It will bring people coming out, standing up.
Right.
But we don't want change that way. We want change by election. We want a non-violent change.
Right.
So it's a first step he get into the country.
Right.
Like I said before, try to get Lukam Sakha
Right.
out work together, unite all the supporter, then they need to get themselves ready for the elections in 2023.
2023.
Yes.
22, 23. Yeah.
22
22 for the commune.
Yes, and 23.
Election.
Yes.
For the national.
So yes, once he's in there, he can bring change because CNRP is the biggest opposition party right now.
But the electoral system remains the same. Like the last previous elections, the CNRP won. I mean, we all know that if the election was held, in a free and fair atmosphere, the CNRP would win. But still, CPP still claim victory anyway in a landslide.
Well, that going back to power again. That's why we need the international. As I mentioned in the hearing yesterday, Congressman Alan Ventel say, will there be a free and fair election or a real election? I say yes. As long as the international put a heavy hand into helping Cambodia, the election will be again just like 2017, and we can accept 2017. Is it a perfect election? No, but an election that the people can accept. And once the election worked the same way as 2017, and I can see really well that the CNRP will take the lead.
That's what you hope. Okay, that's what we all hope for. Okay, well, that's all the time we have now, and I'd like to thank you very much for coming to our studio and for sharing your experience and insight. Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time.
Sure, and we hope to see you again in the studio at some point. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. លោកអ្នកនាងមានស្ដាប់នឹងទស្សនាជាទីមេត្រីពេលវេលារបស់យើងចប់តែត្រឹមនេះបាទយើងខ្ញុំសូមថ្លែងអំណរគុណចំពោះការខិតខំចំណាយពេលវេលាតាមដានស្ដាប់នឹងទស្សនាកម្មវិធីរបស់យើងកម្មវិធីសារព័ត៌មានThe Cambodia Daily តាមបណ្ដាញសង្គម Facebook ហើយយើងនឹងវិលមកជួបលោកអ្នកនាងនៅរាត្រីថ្ងៃស្អែកទៀតប្រសិនបើលោកអ្នកនាងមានសំណួរឬយោបល់សូមសរសេរទៅកាន់កម្មវិធីរបស់យើងតាមអាស័យដ្ឋាន www.facebook.com/withoutfearorfavorkh ខ្ញុំបាទសូមជូនពរលោកអ្នកនាងមានស្ដាប់ឲ្យបានប្រកបតែសេចក្តីសុខសេចក្តីចម្រើនគ្រប់ទិវារាត្រីសួស្តី